right. Before we head towards Mist, we should probably investigate the town links to our castle. As a side note, apparently in this game there aren't separate pockets for regular and key items. Here's hoping that doesn't mean we're gonna end up overloading our bags at some point. Sending us out without a white mage or any healing items really gives you the impression the king doesn't give a damn if we manage to get this job done or not. Either way, he'd have fewer problems. As a side note, I'm really missing some of the little user interface improvements that the Pixel Remaster would have given us in this game. Not just the in-game maps, but also the ability to tell if there's an item in this pot or that crate. Definitely plenty of hiding spaces for items since it's not just chests that have them around here. Personally, I prefer when it's just chests, so I don't start worrying I missed something in a random hidden corner. How many other Dark Knights are there in Baron's military? Cecile is the only one we ever outright see, just like Kain is the only Dragoon we ever see. I'm not asking for there to be named characters that are the same class as the characters we're playing as here. It's just a bit weird that the two characters we're playing as are the only examples of two different kinds of soldiers in a military that's apparently pretty fearsome in this world. Would it really affect the overall story all that much if we could see at least a few generic Dark Knights and generic Dragoons working for the Baron military? We've got generic soldiers, engineers, white mages, and black mages after all. Would you mind elaborating about that? What's so bad about the Dark Sword? Well, that's not much of a problem for parents, since they have, an airship fleet. Pretty sure we're gonna end up using this path later on, possibly when we've, changed factions or something. Sorry, Naming Way, we're not gonna use, your way at all. I'd prefer sticking to the default names. Especially when there's enough of a story for the characters to have distinct personalities of their own. Granted, Cecile's personality isn't exactly three-dimensional. It seems to be generic noble knight with a sprinkling of guilt for working with a villainous lord. And I doubt it's going to change all that much when we inevitably start fighting against the Kingdom of Baron. Still, it's several steps up from the absolute blank slates of Final Fantasies 1 and 3. But what if we don't have any, Gaisal greens when our bags are full? Hell, I'm not even sure I'm pronouncing that word right. I've only ever seen Gaisal, written in a Final Fantasy game. I've never actually heard it. And if it was ever spoken in the games that have voice acting, I don't remember it. Probably not all that important, but still, it felt worth saying as I'm talking to all the people in the tutorial area. And excuse me for saying this, but it feels like the tutorial area in this game is a lot more missable for fresh players than the one in Final Fantasy 1. I'm not so much asking for the game to make the tutorials more interesting or something, not in a game this old. I just feel like if you have to go out of your way to find it, a brand new player is gonna end up pushing forward without ever knowing this place even existed. Why are you referring to it as the Mist? The village is called Mist. I don't think it's actually made of a visible vapor. Besides, we're not going to attack Mist itself, just a monster that happens to be living near it. I'm sure Cecile would love to keep Rosa out of whatever is going to happen. I'm also pretty sure Rosa's going to end up coming along anyway. There's no way she's going to end up being a background character with a sprite that distinct and a personal portrait during dialogue. Hell, the king doesn't have a portrait. He doesn't even have an actual name. He's just the king, which implies that none of the other locations in this game are going to have a king. In the Pixel Remaster, this dancing girl strips off her dress to show a bathing suit when she dances here. It kind of loses some of the hilarity that she doesn't strip and jump into the water for some parts of the dance here. That seems kind of more nonsensical to me than the game censoring the Red Wing soldiers drinking away their sorrows back at the castle. For God's sakes, the named character Rosa, a girl who's going to join our team later, constantly has a bikini top. And it's not like the graphics in this game or the Pixel Remaster make that look especially sexy. Hell, even when they did the 3D remake, they didn't manage to make her seem especially attractive looking. Mostly because the animation style there felt pretty inspired by chibi animation sort of stuff. I'm sure at some point we're going to end up unlocking it. This isn't the kind of game that introduces something like that and then decides not to do anything with it. Looks like Sid is living in the closest thing to a mansion in Baron. Not that it seems especially lavish now that we're inside of it. It's got more empty space than anywhere else in town, but that's really all it does to make itself seem lavish, really. Part of me wants to make a joke about the fact that the guy has only one bed when he lives with a daughter. The other can't help noticing the fact that Rose's home didn't have any beds at all. Why would you need to study the principles of buoyancy when you're making airships? I'm pretty sure buoyancy is about floating when you're in the water, and I don't think that has any benefit whatsoever for something that's flying through the air. Though I suppose one of the things that makes airships in Final Fantasy stand out is that they tend to look like old-fashioned sailboats with helicopter blades. And when the games go for more advanced settings, then they, take inspiration from more modern-looking water-based ships, and again, put helicopter blades on them. It always makes me wonder if the game designers ever plan on a possible situation where the hero's airship is damaged, and it at least temporarily becomes a more traditional water-based ship before eventually being repaired and being airborne again. Not that I can ever recall something like that ever happening in any of the games of the franchise I've gone through, but it could happen. Huh. Did not know that there was a dedicated button for doing that without having to go into the menu. That would have been nice to learn in the tutorial hall. Part of me wants to be a bit concerned that we're dealing with one of those floating eye things right now. The other really wishes they'd saved the name Helldiver for a mid to late game enemy. It just feels like too awesome of a name to throw away on an early game hostile that's meant to be utterly forgettable. Speaking of some of the enemies we're dealing with in this game, I can't help wishing that the goblins had green skin. Sure, the horns and hooked nose help make them look like more than just some generic short humanoid, but they still kind of come across as looking too much like Santa's little helpers. It would also be a good way to help differentiate them some more from dwarves and hobbits. Not that I can ever really remember seeing a hobbit in any Eastern-made video games. Sorry, mysterious voice. We don't really have the option to turn back. We either keep pushing forward, or nothing happens at all. So the move Darkness burned some of our own health in order to send an attack. Sounds like the kind of attack I would avoid using. It also sounds pretty out of character for Cecile, considering he apparently wants to be a chivalrous knight of some kind. Self-sacrifice for the greater good is one thing, but self-mutilation in order to inflict more damage to your enemies is way too much on the edgy side. Granted, his armor is that style of edgy, but just because you wear armor like that doesn't mean it suddenly makes it fit your personality. Great. Now part of me is wondering why they're called sword rats. They seem more like some kind of hedgehog or porcupine to me, and I've never been able to tell the difference between the two kinds of creatures. Just like I've never been able to tell the difference between a raven and a crow. They just look too damn similar to me. Can you even call it a fight if the other side never gets a chance to strike back at you? Okay, that's a good way to showcase one of the more annoying aspects of Final Fantasy IV, and it's present in absolutely all of the versions of it. There are a very annoying number of enemies that can counterattack us in this game. In other Final Fantasies, something counterattacking us is rare, so when it happens you become more wary of that specific monster or the character that does it. But in this game, it is obscenely common from the beginning to the end. I know it's supposed to make us more cautious in every battle, prompt us to make sure our first shot is a killing blow, or at least a significant one and all that, but when it happens so damn often over the course of such a long game, I just stopped giving a damn about it getting counterattacked altogether. It doesn't really make the game as a whole more frustrating to deal with than the other Final Fantasy titles. It's just one of those little gimmicks that feels like it looks better on paper than it did in practice. And while it's nowhere as annoying as Final Fantasy II's leveling and advancement system, it is still something that helps define Final Fantasy IV mechanically speaking. Our health is just gonna get constantly drained by counterattacks from random encounters. Huh. Would have thought that the potion would heal 100 health. This seems to be slightly less than that. Again, sorry, but leaving is not a legitimate option for us. Things are a bit too linear, I'm afraid. Go ahead with the consequences, though maybe if you did a better job of explaining why we shouldn't keep moving forward, then maybe Cecile would be willing to listen. I'm not as sure about Kain, though. A dragon made of mist. and we're about to enter a village by the name of Mist. Does anyone else have the distinct feeling we're gonna be beaten down on the village's mascot and they're gonna be furious for us killing this monster? Can you even really call it a monster when it's capable of speaking to us? Because everything else we fought against generally doesn't bother to try to talk to us or warn us not to approach. Though I suppose the Fiends and Garland from the original Final Fantasy are an exception to that to a degree. Still, I'm not getting the same sense of arrogance that they had in this dragon. Huh. That was a lot less than I was expecting from a boss fight. We took more damage dealing with random encounters. Sure, it could take a pounding compared to everything else individually, but it did not hit that hard in return. And here I was worried that the king wanted to send us on a near-suicidal mission or something. What the hell? Okay, so we've got a bunch of fire bombs flying all over the place. Just what's going on? And now the entire village is on fire. Well, I knew the king was bad, but he clearly doesn't give a damn about keeping the loyalty of either of these high-ranking warriors if he had to trick them to do this. Though I've got to admit, I can't think of any other JRPG where the main characters burn down an entire village in the opening hour. Oh no. A creative name for those who summon creatures to fight for them. At least it's easy to remember. Yeah, probably not the best thing to say right in front of the kid. Just because you didn't know doesn't change the fact that we did cause this. Cain, what the flying fuck? Executing a child? The girl hasn't even hit puberty and you want to end her because of a vague assumption. The king wanted absolutely every summoner dead. He did not explicitly say such orders, nor would I obey such a command even if he did. Well then why would you imply you would go through with it? It feels like you would have gone either way. And while I appreciate that he's a loyal friend to Cecil, the fact that he would be willing to kill a goddamn kid makes me kind of uneasy here. Well, it's not for the kid's sake, that's for sure. Completely understandable. The village is still burning and her mother's corpse hasn't even cooled down. I'd be pretty unwilling to go with them too. Oh god, we're about to fight against a prepubescent girl. What the hell? I'm definitely refusing to send any attacks her way. Okay, apparently she's a summoner too. Apparently she doesn't need to wait until she gets older or something. Wait, so an attack that didn't knock out either of our low-level heroes was enough to reshape the damn continent? But we were at ground zero for that. Well, that's a small mercy. I doubt anyone else in that village managed to make it out alive, though. And now our main character has to try to find the next major location blind, while his only companion is a small child that probably wants to stab him for what he did. Definitely a very unique way to start a story, that's for sure.